All right, guys. So today I'm going to go over your comments on what you are actively focusing on in your journey to improve as players currently. And this is in response to a video I recently made where I asked you guys to leave me these comments, and I wanted to see, what you guys are working on, and I also wanted to kind of get, that question into people's minds who care about getting better, but maybe they don't have an active focus. And the reason is because we learn most effectively with complex skills by having these active focuses, because you can kind of think of it like, I suppose this analogy kind of works where you've got this big machine which has all these different like cogs and moving parts and systems within the whole machine, lots of systems, like a car, for example. So you open up the hood and you're going to like take out like this one thing, and I'm going to put it in front of myself, and I'm going to like work on this thing, and I'm going to like tweak it, and I'm going to put it back. And then I'm going to take something else and tweak it and kind of work on it and then put it back. And that's kind of what we're doing, and we're trying to increase the quality of these different systems, because when you're actually playing, the goal is to not, when you're actually performing, the goal is not to have any mental focus going on any of these things. All of these things need to become kind of autopilot now. You've programmed them, and now you just allow the program to run in the background as you kind of use your system one sort of mind to understand like what you should be doing in the game, and calming and getting just really focused in on reading the game. And then all the other things sort of happen. So that's like really the purpose of how we learn complex skills. And if you want to go deeper into this, I had Meta for a podcast, and it was really, really good. His most sort of studied and researched and passionate field for himself is the field of learning, and he's an esports guy, so he did a great job in sort of helping you to understand what the best practices and applications are in the esports context. And he was also a founder of the Get Amp program, and sort of helping to bring that to the pro players too. So he's done a lot of really cool stuff in terms of like helping use his knowledge to improve how people approach learning. So with that said, let's jump into the comments real quick. I'm going to do my best to be concise with this one. So we'll see how well I do. So the first comment I've got here is on me making a video on self VOD reviewing. So I can definitely do that, but I'll give you a tip, I guess right now, something to tide you over until something like that appears, because it's a big topic. But I would say something that I could advise anyone to do at any level that would be pretty highly valuable is just get some software that allows you to clip the last like 90 seconds or the round, essentially, so you have the context of that round, and then clip as much stuff as you want, and then at the end of the day, set a quota. Doesn't matter like how many it is, but go over a specific amount and be consistent with it. And it can be one. It can be like one, VOD that you've recorded, or like one clip that you recorded that you go over. It can be as little as that. And if you want to do more, but never do less than the quota that you set. And the reason why this approach is good is because it solves two of the major problems with VOD review. One of the major problems is that the amount of information in front of you is overwhelming. What do you even focus on? It's pretty insane with how much stuff you could actually choose. So how do you choose that focus? That's very hard to decide that. And then secondly, to even have good quality analysis, you have to have pretty good theory. And most people are not going to start out with having great theory. Well, I say no one starts out with good theory, and that's something you build over time. So making the VOD review a part of your process in a way that you get the sort of maximum bang for buck with it, I think is with this approach where you just clip stuff, which allows you to review decisions you made and allows you to review scenarios. And so that's a great answer for that. And one thing I will absolutely have to add in terms of doing quality analysis is do not be outcome oriented in your analysis. That is not actual analysis. You have to derive your understanding of, so this is how it should work, is you need to derive your understanding of advantage and disadvantage from the fundamentals that you currently understand, and just develop that over time, because that's what you're looking to understand is, did I put myself in position of the most possible advantage, or was I in a position of a lot of disadvantage? Because much like in poker, you can be very much in advantage and still lose, as you could be very much in disadvantage but still win. It's because that can just happen. There's a degree of variance in the game, much like there is in poker. And so we don't want to be tricked by the outcome oriented thinking, allowing us to think that just because we got the outcome we wanted, that the decision was a good quality one. If you ran the scenario back 10 times, 100 times, would you make the same decision? This is a good way to kind of frame this. So just a very important piece. And also, by the way, you can immediately tell who's a garbage analyst or garbage at analyzing things if they're outcome oriented in how they do the analysis, because that's not analysis. Okay, so next one is also like a really big video. Burnout is a massive topic. I will say though, because I cannot possibly answer this one, it's such a huge topic. I will say though that playing more is never the response to to burnout. That is never the response to burnout. So you can bear that one in mind at the very least. Burnout is something that impacts people in lots of different ways, but ultimately it means that you're generally going to be in a more stressed state. You're going to have less fun. You have less energy. It's just a very bad state to get into, and a lot of people, I don't think, necessarily know what the right response is. So we can definitely address that in a future video. Thank you, Big Mig Val, for the positive words, the encouragement for everybody. Keep grinding, guys. You will get where you want to be. Oh yeah. And I suppose this is also actually, good advice is understandable and applicable today. None of this, do this one thing and join the top 1%. I definitely think this is a good opportunity to add that I do talk a lot about these things because I want my channel to be sort of a reflection as to like how I learned things and how I think that I can help you the most as people interested in these topics. Because I think, much like I think this is how things should be in school, is I think that we should be taught how to critically think and how to sort of derive answers from thinking in like the first principles as much as we can. And so for me, that then it's a must, because if I'm going to invest my time in training, I want to know that that time investment actually makes sense, and it allows you to go, I think, deeper and to be more passionate. If you truly understand what you're doing, I think that's the most kind of powerful place to be. Plus, if you understand things from principles and you're kind of used to thinking in that way, it helps you to be able to independently think and to independently solve your own problems and not have to go and find like, the one quick tip. Instead, you'll be looking to try to understand the principles that you don't yet fully grasp. And then that way you'll be able to solve everything yourself. So, because ultimately, I should say as well, like if you truly want to get like really sick at anything, the only way to do so is with independent thinking. You have to be able to go to that level of mental effort to be able to achieve that. So, quick little side note. So we've got crosshair placement as one to improve consistency, movement, recoil, control. So pretty common ones here. I think I want to make a quick comment about crosshair placement because I think this is a great focus to have, but I would definitely advise people that they don't have it as a focus that's kind of not cycled out at some point. I think you should definitely cycle it in and cycle it out because one way to think about all these different topics again is that they are these big parts of this big machine. And crosshair placement is an interesting one because it's a mechanical skill, and often there's not necessarily like a lot of focuses in game that are like, we're not going to, for example, try to get better click timing as a focus by training that in the game. But crosshair placement is something that you will be actually training whilst you're actually playing the game. And I don't mean just necessarily just death matching, but you're probably going to be focusing on this when you're actually playing matches. Now, I could make an argument that one way to approach this is to be very strict on it with DMs, but then to try to not focus as hard on it when you're actually playing your match. And the reason is because I would say this is because this requires a lot of mental energy. If you're having this as a consistent focus, you're using crosshair placement 100% of the time. At least I am when I'm playing the game, typically speaking. I'm always trying to do that. And that's like part of what this training is there to do, is to try to make you do it all the time when you're on your autopilot and have it be good quality all the time when it's on your autopilot. And that's where you perform mechanically the best, when it's operating from that kind of subconscious level of thinking, that system 2 level of thinking is when it performs the best. So by bringing it into conscious focus to improve it, to make sure that I'm making my flick correctly, I'm as quick as I need to be on the flick, it's as snappy as it should be, then I'm landing with like good tension control, and I'm able to have like smooth and fluid corrections after I've had this big flick. I'm like my pre-aiming is good, like all these different things that I'm visualizing my opponent swinging. All these different things are super important. But it can actually be the case that when you bring this into conscious focus, you'll actually notice your aim get worse, which can be demotivating for some people because it's hard to understand, like, oh, I'm putting my focus on this thing that's very aim related, it feels like, and setup related for aim, and yet my aim is worse. Part of the reason is because you have so much active conscious thought going into the crosshair placement into the aiming, that's going to make the aiming worse, because aim performs the best when it's more of a secondary thing that's happening in your mind. So just wanted to throw that out as something to bear in mind, because what you might find is as you cycle this out, your crosshair placement will no longer look quite as clean, but it will look cleaner and better than it did previously. So you've improved the average, even though it will look a little bit worse than when you had the consistent focus. Also, you'll probably find that your aim actually gets better once you've cycled it out too, and it's operating more again in that secondary system, or that more kind of subconscious mode where aim performs. That's where aiming really performs the best. Right. So, always working on being aware and expecting to take fights, trying to play off with my teammates and communication, reacting to player movement instead of predicting. Yeah. Okay. So these are two ones I definitely want to talk about. I think the general awareness is really good. A lot of this is to do with awareness, which I think is kind of nice that you've got these separate points about awareness, because one is more about sort of teammate awareness, and the other one is about just like the general awareness around how my opponents are moving, expecting to take fights. So this is like overall map awareness. So there's a lot of mini map reading that is required here. So really cool to see that as a focus. There's lots of tricks that you can use to try to get yourself to be habituated to reading the minimap more. So you can, and I actually like how this is split up, because you can funnel it through these two buckets. Bucket number one, opponents. Bucket number two, teammates, position. So opponents obviously don't have information on that all the time, but you do have information on your teammates all the time. And so with opponents, oftentimes what happens is you will have a checklist in your mind. Okay, if I see something on my kill tracker and I didn't see like where that person actually died, because it's not in my area, I will look at the minimap and I'll take cover, so I'm safe from any angles, look at the minimap. That's a cue that you have. You also have other cues like I'm hearing some shooting. I will check the minimap, regardless as to who's shooting, just so you can see like what's going on in the minimap if there's action. Now you can also have the same thing for your, with your teammates, but maybe in a different way, because you have to look at, it from the point of view as to, what matters from the teammates positioning. Well, playing off of your teammates, well, that's a really important one. Being able to always understand if there's opportunities to play off your teammates, so you can call it. So having the up-to-date awareness around this is good. The other thing too is timing of the round, because the rounds have they have their phases. They have the early round, the mid round, and the late round. And in these different phases, it's very important to make sure that you understand what the map control scenario is. And this is massively, if you can see where your teammates are, that tells you how much map control your team has, and you can kind of guess how much map control your opponent has, and that can give you the opportunity to understand, okay, what do I need to be doing with my teammates at this point? So having like incremental points every 20-30 seconds where you're looking at the minimap just to see where your teammates are is pretty important. And again, like I said, I like to kind of split a Valorant round into early, mid, and late round, because typically that's how things are structured. Like you'll have that initial action where there's an initial play for map control and pressure somewhere, and then you have the reaction from the defense, or maybe the defense are taking the initiative first, and then after that kind of first bit of action happens, the mid round is framed against what just happened, who gained or lost ground, who got a pick or lost a pick, whether there was utility exchanged. The mid round then forms, and then what after that initial action, that's what the attacking team is setting up for, is to do something in the mid round, whether that's to set up to take a site, or whether that's to set up to take more map control, like in mid or something like that. That's something that happens reliably. There's this kind of cool off period after the initial action and the setup period for that mid round play. And so you get these points and structure of the round where you could also look at that and be like, okay, I want to make sure that I always know what my teammates are doing before that initial action and after the initial action, before, like during the setup period in the mid round to see if we have opportunities, or after that kind of mid-round period. So it's like figuring out when does it make sense to look at my teammates, because if you're able to establish that, you'll be able to do it in moments that are actually valuable, and not just constantly be looking at the minimap, because otherwise you could just always be looking at the minimap and it's going to be a bit wild. But you want to make sure that it actually makes sense. So that's why I wanted to expand on that point a little bit, because there's lots of different ways you can do it. It depends on your role as well and how you like to play. But I think trying to figure something out along those lines can be helpful. Focusing on overflicks and flicks, focusing on movement properly, knowing when to counter strafe, when to take my timings based on movement. Sometimes with this one, take times based on movement, I find that some people need to be really aggressive with this. Some people I've come across have a lot of bad habits with their sort of essentially their shooting in Valorant specifically. I think Counter-Strike gives you more options, and I don't see as many of like these common problems. But in Valorant, it's a bit more clear cut exactly what is good and what is not good in terms of the shooting mechanics and just sort of dodging and moving. So I would advise people to, because generally spraying is pretty unreliable, I would advise people who have an issue with like crouching too much or have like really ingrained habits which aren't good with their movement and shooting, to just do like be pretty aggressive with the amount of like DMs they do. Don't do any shooting that is not, 1 or 2 bullet bursts followed by just counter strafing constantly, like staying constantly in movement at only 1 or 2 bullet bursts, nothing else, only shooting when you're accurate, and trying to figure out how you can shoot as quickly as possible while still being accurate. So doing just enough movement so that the gun cools down enough that you can be accurate again, and then shooting and then moving straight away again. And then just like playing with the timing and the rhythms in terms of doing all of that. That's a really key skill in Valorant to kind of nail down. And you can use that type of fighting style in a very large number of situations, because again, we're not really spraying as much. So in any sort of mid to long range fights especially, which obviously the game has huge amounts of, that's what you want to be doing most of the time. So I get some people to just grind that until it becomes much more habituated and they stop just pressing crouch. Okay, another VDIM supporter. So I've heard lots of people that everyone I've spoken to that's done VDIM have said it's really helped them. And the people that I've the tac shooter players who are like, I don't really want to do, these aiming categories that don't help me. I think that's totally fine too. But I have heard from a lot of people that have done the benchmarks anyway, which has a lot of skills that you wouldn't be using as much in Valorant, have said that it's helped their skill floor a lot. Increasing consistency in the game and decision-making aim. So this is quite a broad one in terms of a focus. So this one I think is kind of hard to define. This might not be specific enough, because all these things are really like decision-making, aim, consistency. Consistency is really about, like, what is consistency? Like, consistency is about, you have this range, and it's how tight is the range of your performance. So your worst game to your best game, how tight is this? If you're not a good player, your range is going to be enormous. And the reason is very simple, because there will be certain spots that you're very familiar with playing in the game where you'll perform really well, because whether it's a stylistic comfort, maybe it's a reps thing, like whatever it is, you are just really good at playing Omen on C, on like Haven or whatever, like you're just very developed there compared to maybe other spots in the map where like you're attacking on Omen, maybe you're really shit at doing that or something like that. And so you'll be like very inconsistent unless you're in the spots where you're very good, because consistency really just describes your average skill across, well, not the average skill, but it describes the what's it called, the troughs and the peaks and troughs of your performance. So to improve your consistency, you have to like figure out where you're weak and then work on those things incrementally, and that kind of like basically brings that range, it tightens the range up, and it gets closer to your top part of your range. And obviously, hopefully you improve the top part of your range all the time, but yeah. So my point is that this is quite a general focus, too general, I think, to really be considered a proper focus. So that's the feedback I would have on this one. I would say try to have something a bit more defined. And if you know what this means to you, actually, practically speaking, that's also totally fine, because again, as I mentioned, as long as you have something that you're actively improving, it's totally fine. Even if you're not able to bring the idea across to anybody else, if you feel like you're learning and you're getting something from the focus, then that's good. Staying positive and focusing on learning rather than winning, super huge one as well. I think, generally speaking, if you're staying positive and focusing on learning, you'll probably still be in a really good spot to win. You're not really sacrificing anything there. There's no compromises. However, if you get upset because you're not winning, then you'll probably play worse. So I think honestly, this has an outcome that's actually very favorable to getting a win by not focusing on it actually to a large extent, because it also helps you know just to stay grounded in what you've set for yourself, which is to be positive and to focus on learning. So that's like you can always control this. You can always control this. You cannot control this one. So that's something to bear in mind. Precision click time with low sense and high FOV to get less shaky long distance. So I like how specific this is. Improving mental endurance. I'd love to hear some tips here. This one is definitely a bigger topic too, but I'll try to do a really brief version. So mental endurance, I think what you're talking about is actually the focus and how far you can stretch your focus, essentially, to like how much good focus you get. The way I look at this is that we have a finite amount of energy during the day. You know, eventually you'll get tired and you'll have to sleep, you know, but your body will have to recover. It has a lot of systems in operation constantly. It's like, you know, it's like a car as well. Like, you know, you only have so much gas to go off of and to power your systems. And so eventually you run out. And different people, like different cars, I'm just really sticking to this analogy, have different capacities in their gas tank. So that is something that's worth bearing in mind here, because, you know, there was a quote from Simple many years ago where some reporter asked him, you know, how are you as good as you are, essentially? And he was like, well, I just try 100% of the time. And it's like, you know, a lot of people, you know, look at that answer and they're like, Jesus, well, obviously that's like, yeah, that's like of course you would say that, you know, you're Simple, you know, you just try really hard and you'll be awesome. But actually he did describe, I think, extremely concisely exactly the reason why he's so good, in my opinion at least, is because Simple has a natural capacity that is by far greater than the average for intense focus over long periods of time. And the thing that's interesting about that is, what does it mean? It translates to better quality, like more energy, better quality focus. It allows him to have more reps, more higher quality reps than everyone else, which translates into more skill than everyone else. So, you know, everybody is a bit different with their capacity for this. Obviously, you want to do all the basics right. So the basics that will be the most impactful to this is good sleep, good diet, good exercise. And then, you know, you also have to understand the relationship between other things that could stress you out, because anything that stresses you out will diminish your mental energy and your ability to focus as a result. So if you're, you know, in a stressful environment emotionally for whatever reason, you know, having arguments with your girlfriend, or you've had, you know, someone passed away recently, or, you know, just like any of life's events that can be stressful, that's gonna you know, be impactful. And so there are strategies, you know, that you can use for that: meditation, journaling, you know, just you know, taking walks, you know, there are things you can do, but generally speaking, it's about figuring out, after you've done those basics, how are you going to best use that energy, and can you work out at what point are you going to get lower quality reps, at what point are you getting tired. I had to figure out what are the points in which I can see that's happening. And so I would identify common things like, I made a play where I was clearly less patient than I should be, or I made a play where the play is a mistake, and it's a mistake I've corrected already. When I start to do these things, these are huge red flags for me that, again, if I'm trying to prepare for competition, I stop playing as soon as I realize I'm at that point, because I do not want to get any reps that are low quality. So if that's kind of where you're at, then that's something that you can also, you know, approach it in a similar way. Translating my tapping DM aim style into ranked, clear communication in terms of pre-rounds. So this is really great. Super well defined and very easy to measure. Having a positive mindset, learning attitude while playing ranked. Yeah, that's also very awesome as well. Love to see that. Always give a shout out to Jocko Willink's Good video, which is just the best framing tool, reframing tool, or at least my favorite reframing tool, or version of that. Oh, IRU FPS, we've got a coach here. He wants to get Radiant by the end of the year. And here are some of the goals and sub-goals. So we've got remaining calm in gunfights and playing towards win conditions and identifying win conditions. So it's definitely much more of an advanced one, depending on what advanced means to you. But playing towards win conditions means you're trying to play towards the inherent aspects of the game that favor you, essentially, and increase your chance to have advantage, or are advantages that you have that are yet to be realized. Or you're trying to, by using your defaults or whatever, you're trying to press on a weakness and leverage your strength against the opponent's weakness. That's usually, I would say, oftentimes how you could think about a win condition. But there's obviously, identifying win conditions. They can also pop up because an opponent makes a mistake. So I like this too because of how you have to be actively thinking about what's going on in a round. Because, for example, in a ranked game, like there's often going to be one player on the other team that is going to be a leak for his teammates that will act in certain ways that are too aggressive or create opportunities that can be exploited, but you have to make a call to your teammates to be in the right positions, to coordinate in the right way, to exploit that player. Maybe it's someone that's too aggressive on mid on ascent. If you just start out with, heavier defaults towards mid at the beginning, that guy might get overwhelmed and killed, and you can get an early advantage, and that can then become a win condition because you get a 5v4 straight away. And other win conditions that are more kind of like, let's say, inherent. It could be composition based. So it could be, let's say, the opposing team doesn't have a sentinel, so they're going to be really, they're going to really struggle with flanks and these various things. Or it could be the case of this team only has one initiator on Haven. Okay, this team is going to really suck at like retaking map control like late in the mid round. So we can kind of understand more at what points they are strongest and weakest, and what points we have to be most aware of to be concerned about, or where we have a point of advantage we can exploit by looking at the comps there. Okay, so we got some other ones as well that are more kind of to do with aiming, so that's really cool. But in the question of speeding things up, I'm going to go down to a few more of these ones, and I'm definitely going to make this into a second video as I go over these, so I can get all of them. Let's see. The controlling and resetting elevator motions is definitely a really interesting one too, because people don't really think about their emotions in general. So just even having the awareness here is quite a positive one for people. Just to, like, check in with yourself. Like, how am I feeling after, like, am I having a lot of fun? Am I feeling stressed? Am I feeling like kind of lost? What's happening emotionally can be really powerful, because it allows you to kind of see what the warning signs are. If you're going to be, tilting for whatever reason, you can kind of get more information as to what that's going to, what contributes to that. And then on the opposite end too, you get to see how you feel when you're performing at your best, which is one of the ways to get to your A game, is to understand how you feel emotionally. And by doing that work, you can then sort of basically figure out, okay, if I'm someone that's like, when I'm like in my A game, I'm really calm. Do things before you start your playing session that actually help you to be calm. Or if it's the case that you operate best when you're really fired up, do things that get you high energy and get you fired up. Like, if you understand yourself in that way, it will be definitely quite beneficial. I made the mistake of thinking that I was someone that needed to be fired up, but I'm actually the opposite. I like benefit from being really calm, which I don't enjoy in my like pre-playing routine as much, because it's much more fun to get like super hype, but and get all the hype energy and the hype music going. But I actually do way better when I'm in like a kind of dialed in calm, like really calm and relaxed state. Let's do a couple more here. Just gonna skip through a little bit. Okay. Lots of mechanics and aiming, tension management. Always good to see that. Aim, mental communication. Oh, I like this one. Don't let the other team be in the driving seat. This is a really cool focus to have, because you're creating a situation in your brain where you're constantly looking for this condition of don't let them be in the driving seat. So what that means is, it means look for opportunities to be disruptive, or it means take the initiative first. And so those two things have their own qualities, because you're disrupting the opponent when they're doing something, and then you're looking for moments when you can take the initiative. So you're already kind of like training your brain in onto certain ways of thinking and making decisions, and that's going to lead you down to limit testing. That's going to be really helpful in becoming like a better player, because this like opens up a way of thinking in the game in that regard. This is a very helpful way for people that feel like they're just like stuck in their decision making to try to approach adding more ways to make decisions in the game. Because sometimes people get stuck because they're just stuck in like one mode, which is too passive. But this is very active. And it forces you to understand the theory of the game more too by doing this. So I really like this one a lot. Okay, let's do one more real quick. There's been quite a lot here, so I would definitely have to like do another video to go over these. I just want to find another juicy one. Let's have a look. You guys are killing it. Proper flick technique, KO lineups, tension management. So yeah, we're definitely getting a lot of like similar ones here. Lots of stuff around mechanics, biceps, triceps, and shoulders. Improving accuracy of the initial flick. Stop predicting. Less focus on scores. Okay. Improving the accuracy of the initial flick. Yeah, this is definitely like a really interesting one. I've the initial flick is like you can definitely improve the accuracy of this, I think, with like a lot of like technique grind for sure. I think one of the reasons I like the BOD pill methodology so much is because it basically gives you two chances. It gives you a technique that allows you to be able to do the initial flick, but also to be super consistent, that if the initial flick is off, you 100% or like 99% get them in the second movement. Because of how the technique works. So definitely look up the, Bardos's, BOD pill flick technique if you are not familiar with that. The way it works is you have your like big like initial flick that's super snappy and fast, and you have the tension management, so you get that control right at the end of the movement. If you did not hit the target, you micro correct. But at each stage, you're doing the hit confirm in your mind, which is also something that's really powerful. Is that you can do with aim trainers is you can get a lot of reps on hit confirm, and then when you go into your death matches, it just kind of feels a bit easier to get into that mode of hit confirm. And that's really important because a lot of players will spam and not be confident in their ability to micro correct. And so I feel like, again, aim trainers give you that extra bit of confidence to micro correct, in a way where you're taking your time. And I've seen a lot of people talk about that too, about taking time on their shots. But anyway, we went over quite a few of your focuses, so thank you all for sharing those. I'm sure I'm going to make a follow-up video. There's a lot of material here, so thank you all for interacting with the post. If you want to support me on Patreon to get the ability to ask questions to any of the upcoming podcast guests that I will be having over the next coming weeks and months, then feel free to do that. And otherwise, I appreciate you all for supporting the channel, and I'll catch you guys on the next one.